Good morning, Madam Chairperson, my fellow panellists, ladies and gentlemen. To start off, let me thank the HIA 2012 Conference Committee for inviting me to this year's conference and to this truly magnificent city. Today, I would like to discuss a theoretical framework which I created and applied as part of my doctoral study in University College Cork, Ireland. So I will be sharing the experience of applying the model to the Irish experience, and the perspective that I'm coming from is political science. To give you some context of where I'm talking about, Ireland is located on the periphery of Europe on the left in red, as you see, and on the right, or on your left, is a more detailed map. And in the green on the bottom of the map is the Republic of Ireland. And in the north, in the white colour, is Northern Ireland, under the jurisdiction of the United Kingdom. The background to the study, the aim was to examine the use of HIA evidence to inform local public policy. And specifically, I wanted to look at the influences affecting the use for this study. What I did was I analysed 4 case studies, basically 4 HIAs completed, 2 from each jurisdiction on the island of Ireland. So you see in highlighted on the left map are the cities in which the HIAs were conducted. So 2, one in Dublin and Donegal, and 1 in Belfast and Derry, Londonderry. To give you some context, policy context, there was great momentum for health impact assessment in the early 2000s. In the Republic, we have the National Health Strategy, where it was proclaimed that HIA will be introduced as part of the public policy development process. And in Northern Ireland, the Investing for Health stated this programme of HIA will address issues of coordination, capacity building, tool development and quality assurance. So very positive endorsements of health impact assessment. And what I wanted to do was look at how realistic, or what was happening in reality in terms of using the evidence that was being generated from the HIA. So the case studies, they are from 2 topics, physical environment and housing, as you can see. And the locations are 1 physical environment from the Republic, 1 physical environment from Northern Ireland, so you have the idea. And in Dublin, the HIA was of traffic and transport in a marginalised inner city community in Ballyfermot. And the aim of the HIA was to examine air pollution levels. And then in Antrim, Belfast, it was a HIA of a draft air quality action plan for the city. And then in housing in Donegal, we had a HIA of a travellers' accommodation programme. And for those of you who are not sure of who the travellers are, they are an indigenous, nomadic minority group living in Ireland, and they suffer from a very poor health status under all of the indicators. Then in Northern Ireland, Derry, Londonderry was a HIA of a housing proposal of a housing estate, a social housing estate called Dove Gardens. And it was part of a social regeneration project where the housing were basically to be destroyed and the residents would be decanted. And the HIA was informing the redesign of the housing. So it was quite a nice HIA. So my study relates to the typology that Ben discussed earlier in many ways. Decision support, all HIAs were to support decisions. That was the purpose that they were commenced for. In terms of advocacy and community-led, elements of both of these models could describe the traveller accommodation HIA. This HIA was sought to reframe or challenge decision-making by ensuring under-recognised health concerns were addressed. This HIA was seen as an evidence-informed and practical way in which communities can contribute to decisions. So basically, it was started by the Donegal Traveller Group, and they wanted to basically oppose the status quo, which was very much against the culture of the travellers in Donegal. So I would go one step further and call that HIA oppositional, because that was the purpose for which it was started, to oppose the status quo and the local municipalities' accommodation program. This is the research framework that I generated. It's very simplified, as you see, and I cannot go into so much detail on it, but just to tell you briefly that I wanted to look at the overarching structure and the underlying norms and values that I hypothesized as influences on the use of HIA evidence. And then in the utilization variable, the utilization is divided into degree. At the beginning of my PhD study, I was very naive, and I thought that use could only be measured by direct. But that is actually totally insufficient, and I needed to look at the variance of use of knowledge. So I wanted to discuss part of the application in terms of utilization. Selection criteria for choosing the HIAs were that they were completed HIAs with outcome reports, that they had a steering committee that had representatives from all stakeholders, and that they were designed to inform local public policy explicitly. So the utilization indicators come from Rossi et al.'s work. Instrumental use is direct use, so directly the HIA evidence was used in policy. Conceptual use is whereby the ideas of the HIA are brought and used in policy. And persuasive is basically political use. The HIA is used for political means. And I like what Becker says. She describes that a politicization of knowledge rather than to the rationalization of policy, which would describe nicely this indicator. So the usefulness of this theoretical model, so when combining the theoretical and empirical findings, the conclusion was that the HIAs were used in policy development, whether ticking all of the indicators or not. HIA is influenced by many influences, by tier of government, local or national, the involvement of key partners, and also the stage of the involvement, whether they're all involved in the beginning or later on. The conceptualization of health was really important, and it's just like what Danny Broderick was saying about self-evident truth. My understanding of health is totally different to someone from a different background. For example, planning background, we found, it was quite a different model of health that they were operating under. And the role of policymakers and the community, and again, this also goes back to the timing that they're involved, and genuine involvement of both policymakers and community, or are we just giving lip service to their involvement, especially with community? Mainstreaming the tool is important, and out of my research, in terms of mainstreaming, in Ireland, integrated impact assessment is one very feasible option, bringing it together. And making HIA mandatory in Ireland, it is not yet the case, and I can't imagine that it's going to come on stream in the near future, given other priorities that we have on the political agenda. And the Southern HIA Network, I put the website there if you're interested. It was a network that I co-founded and coordinated for a while. And in that network, what we did was we brought together academics, public health practitioners, environmental health practitioners, an architect who came on board, very enthusiastic guy, and we were there to provide support and advice and to anyone getting involved in HIA. So one nice HIA that was done was on a community garden. And I was excited after my PhD. I wanted to get into some real practice, especially when I came up with my recommendations and I wanted it to be used. So this was a great opportunity for me to get out into the real world. The extent of use or utilization, it's not a linear pathway, as I'm sure you're aware of. A focus on direct use would have been totally insufficient, as Eva Elliott and Francis have noted. The extent of use requires examination of direct and indirect use. And this study has shown that the use of HIAs is influenced by the contextual conditions, which can be foreseen to project commencement. So merci beaucoup, thank you, Gurav Mila Mahagouiv, and Jackie M. Velmi Pekne.